All right. Well, speaking of time being limited, I don't want to, belabor the point here of what's going on in our lives. Let's talk about what happens and how to train when you don't have enough time. Now, most Americans, based on some survey data, was actually pretty interesting how they did this, but that's for another podcast. Most Americans seem to have about 5 hours of free time per day, which I found fascinating because I was thinking in my own head, like, do I actually have 5 hours of free time per day? And then I looked at my Netflix history and I said, yes, I do, in fact, have about 5 times or 5 hours per day of free time. Now, whether or not that's actually accounted for, or that's, something that people can leverage effectively, that's a whole nother topic. But despite this seemingly overabundance of free time, less than of 1/5 of people worldwide, adults worldwide, are actually meeting the current physical activity guidelines. Do you think that this sort of mismatch between maybe reported or even like experimentally determined free time and the amount of people, not hitting the current guidelines, what's the relationship there? Do you think this is more of a perception issue, or maybe there are other factors that are really, limiting people's ability to exercise?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of what those 5 hours of quote unquote free time really consist of likely varies quite a bit between people. So even if, for example, that it represents 5 hours of time that is not spent doing like occupational duties for your job, there may be other things that you choose to spend that time on that are at least as important, or for some people, maybe more important to them personally than engaging in exercise would be. So there may be some element of truth to that. But the other aspect of this is it reminds me of the studies in the nutrition world where they have people estimate their calorie intake and estimate their physical activity, calorie expenditure, or like the amount of activity they do. And people just systematically and consistently, underestimate how many calories they consume and overestimate how much energy they expend doing physical activity. And so I suspect that there's a huge portion of this that is more perception based, and almost like when you ask somebody on the spot, like, why do you not engage in this amount of exercise, not in a judgmental way, but purely from like a scientific data gathering standpoint. Humans are good at just confabulating explanations for things, just backfilling an explanation that sounds plausible to themselves, even if it's not necessarily perfectly accurate or fully explanatory.